So what we thought of what do we mean by sustainability? Longer term perspective, funding insured, or more stability in funding, more ownership by the local community, a longer planning horizon, maybe 3 to 5 years, not 10, but something longer than the next 2 months. Organisational sustainability, not necessarily meaning that organisational preservation, but organisational, an ability to merge with other organisations, the flexibility to merge, to ensure the sustainability of the activities, not necessarily the organisation. Political sustainability, that you're accepted in what you're doing, and of course this point about flexibility and adaptability. In terms of the main points that came through, and I'll just highlight some of them. Engagement and involvement and empowerment of the refugees in the camps. We were talking a lot about Greece, but also Calais. Very important, all sorts of issues there around ethnic homogeneity and community cohesion within the camp, and some of the difficulties when there's competition between different groups in particular camps. The point that came through strongly is the amount of frontline work that is still being done by grassroots organisations. And so all the way through our discussion we were trying to tease out, why is that the case? What is it that is making it difficult for agencies to take over activities, frontline activities that grassroots organisations are doing? And all sorts of issues came up. Well, I come on to those, but okay, I'll cover those on the next page. But financing, of course, loomed large in our discussions. So grassroots groups having difficulty accessing funds. We had the idea of maybe not all. Let's just think of ECHO. Not all ECHO partners in Greece changing their rules to make it easier to work with grassroots organisations, but how about the idea of one ECHO partner in Greece becoming the go-to agency for the grassroots organisations? So maybe some of the rules can be relaxed in relation to that one, and then that one develops the knowledge and the connections and the trust with all the grassroots groups, and they know the difference between them. So rather than approach it on a across-the-board bureaucratic level, adapt in relation to perhaps one. But the clear need is that grassroots groups are recognised, and their work that they're continuing to do, often through crowdfunding and private funding, is recognised and brought into the picture. So one of the things that needs changing is that the bigger agencies need to be more adaptable. We heard examples of agencies coming to a camp and saying, we've got funding to do child-friendly spaces. Oh, there's a grassroots group already doing child-friendly spaces, so we'll go to another camp, which isn't really the response that's needed, because that grassroots organisation has to carry on running the child-friendly spaces with no funding or crowdfunding. So there is a lot of bureaucratic mandate issues within the humanitarian sector that is preventing them from working effectively with grassroots groups. There was the case of an agency mandated to work only in the health sector. It was its responsibility to coordinate in the health sector, but they weren't capable of providing sexual and reproductive health care. But they didn't want another organisation to cover that, because that was infringing on their mandate. So a grassroots group was having to cover those things with its own private funding and couldn't access the funding of the mandated agency. we thought, so we were trying to come up with ideas as to how to change the dynamic in these situations. One idea certainly is transparency of funding. Now, transparency of funding goes to a certain level, I think, in the humanitarian sector, but it doesn't go right down to the camp level. So it's not possible to say, in this camp, we spent $1 million was spent overall, and so much was spent on this activity and this activity, and so much was available for the grassroots organisation. To have that information at the camp level would be extremely useful in having those discussions with the bigger agencies and working out more effective ways of working together. Make it easier for smaller organisations to apply for funding. We also talked about coordination, and you know, in many humanitarian operations, you would have OCHA doing a who, what, where exercise. So who's doing what, where? Which sectors are well covered and which sectors are poorly covered? Now, maybe that's not being done because it's UNHCR that's coordinating in this case. And is there a? We just wonder, is there a case for actually inviting OCHA to work in Europe? Because these are the roles that OCHA would normally do, and it's needed if this debate, this relationship between the bigger agencies and the grassroots groups is going to be mediated by a more neutral, coordination-focused body. So that was one idea. That's it. Those were our main points. Any other points to add from the group?
Well put.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Jolly good. Thank you.